They say that God made all of mankind equal in his image. So that must make Game Freak Satan because they did not apply that same mindset when making Pokemon. What do you mean Delibird isn't as good as Arceus? In the Pokemon video games, it's pretty cut and dry that some Pokemon are just better than others. I mean, the evolution mechanic as a whole functions as a way to turn your Pokemon into different and stronger monsters. And going even further, Pokemon have a whole bunch of genetic stuff that make them literally just build different. This Eevee is a little whiny bitch. It's his nature. Now, when you're a kid just playing the game, you're not really thinking about base stat totals, EVs, natures, abilities, or paying your taxes, so you just see a Pokemon that looks cool and throw it into your team. What do you say? Optimal movesets? You're telling me my Infernape shouldn't know Ember, Flame Wheel, Flare Blitz, and Close Combat? Listen, when you're 7 and you see that Swords Dance doesn't do any damage, you're not going to get rid of Ember for it. Because what if I need to use a weak attack later on? Regardless, however, of whatever awful decisions you make as a trainer, the fact still remains that this Blastoise will always be better than this Squirtle. And while that's true in the video games, it's actually not always the case in the TCG. You see, well, let's just say the TCG takes some liberties on what Pokemon are actually good in the metagame. Sure, for the most part, a Charmander card is always going to be worse than a Charizard card, but what I'm more so talking about here is Pokemon that have little to no presence in the competitive video game being actual threats in the TCG. What makes a Pokemon good in the TCG is, in my opinion, 3 different things. Its attacks, its abilities, and its synergy with other cards. Usually you see meta cards fill all 3 of these roles at once. Look at something like Miraidon EX in the current format. It's a basic Pokemon with 220 HP that you can play straight away onto your bench. Its attack does 220 damage for 3 energy, which is enough to one-shot a lot of relevant basic EX Pokemon in the format right now. Sure, it has the drawback of preventing you from using the attack on your next turn, but there's really easy ways to circumvent that. What really makes this card great though is its ability Tandem Unit, which lets you search your deck for 2 basic electric Pokemon and bench them. This means you can use Tandem Unit to get 1 Pokemon you need, and another Miraidon EX to use Tandem Unit again, and what do you know, your entire bench is set up on your first turn. This pairs great with cards like Raikou V, whose attacks do more damage the more bench Pokemon you have in play for only 2 energy. Synergy! Now, I know what you're thinking. Gabe, Miraidon is a legendary Pokemon. Of course it's gonna have a good card. And to that, I show you Miraidon EX. The other Miraidon EX. They're both bad. Yeah, this is a different card with the same name, legal in the same format at the exact same time. Now I know that's a little bit confusing, but we'll look at this Miraidon and we'll immediately spot a few differences. The first one is that this is a Dragon type. Now, being a Dragon type probably sounds cool, but what that really means is that this Miraidon doesn't synergize as well in the electric decks that play the energy you'd normally need with Miraidon. This Miraidon can't take advantage of cards like Electric Generator, which is a really powerful item card that lets you attach up to 2 extra energy cards to your electric Pokemon in play if you find any on the top 5 cards of your deck. Also, its attack costs 2 different types of energy, which already makes it hard to play in any deck since you need to have ways of drawing both types of energy you need to attack, which can hurt your overall consistency. Now, that's not to say that Dragon-type Pokemon are always bad. I mean, Regidrago V-Star is the best deck by far in the entire format right now, but what matters is the value you're getting for your energy attachment, and in this case, the value is just not worth it. Repulsion Bolt can do more damage if an opponent already has been damaged, but that requires a little bit of setup with something other than Miraidon sometimes to really take advantage of most of the time. And its second attack does the exact same thing as other Miraidon Photon Blaster, but it has a harder energy requirement for almost the exact same effect. So you can see that just because a Pokemon is supposed to be good, doesn't mean it always will be.
And of course that means the opposite is also true, which I find to be a lot more interesting. So to show off this trend, let's start off with my favorite deck to play right now, United Wings.
This deck features powerhouse Pokemon like Murkrow, Flamigo, Wattrel, and Dartrix as the main damage dealers. So what makes these bulk cards worth playing? Well, it's all about the attack and the synergy. This deck gets its name from the attack that all 4 of these Pokemon share, United Wings. Basically, it does 20 damage for each of these birds that you have in your discard pile with the attack. So the game plan is to burn through as much of your deck as fast as possible to throw as many of these guys into the trash as you can. But Gabe, you cry, how do I get rid of all these birds? Well, that's where the trainers come in. thanks to stuff like Ultra Ball, Earthen Wrestle, Brilliant Blender, and my favorite trash man, Grant. Shredding all these birds is a breeze. And it better be, because you're fighting against that! Okay, let's do some math here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we got 13 birds, so that's 260... Wait, wasn't I supposed to be talking about how this deck was good? Okay, well, let me just swap Murkrow for Dartrix, and boom, there you go, 500 damage, easy peasy. Yeah, so while this deck can take knockouts against basic and even some Stage 1 EX Pokemon after a turn or two of setup, the problem is when you run into Stage 2 EX Pokemon, because to hit over 300 damage without weakness means you gotta get every bird into the trash and attack with this Ditto here, which lets you use one of your basic Pokemon's attacks in the discard pile. So yeah, United Wings is playable technically, but so is my 59 Energy and Moo Moo Melt Miltank deck. But how about I just stop lollygagging and show you when this archetype was actually good. Night March is everything United Wings wishes it could be with one less bird. Well, actually 16 less birds, but you get the point. Night March is functionally the exact same attack as United Wings, and this time around there are only 12 possible users you can have in the discard at once. So what makes this 30 HP bug better than these Flamigos? Well, to put it simply, instead of having to kill this Charizard, you had to kill this Charizard. You see, when the power level is lower, decks like this shine since it's a lot easier to hit your damage numbers while also burning less resources. Now, despite not winning any world championships, Night March was still a super dominant deck in the format from 2014 to 2019, taking multiple top 16 finishes and, winning a lot of money too.
Okay, well... Is this an earthquake? Oh, what is causing this? Is some kind of seismic shaking, some kind of...
What's blue and ugly and covered in disgusting spasming growths and swims around in the swamps of NU? It's everyone's favorite frog! This blubbering monster wreaked havoc on the metagame from 2014 to 2016 by basically being the most annoying deck you could ever match up against. It's all thanks to Seismitoad's attack, Quaking Punch, which for 2 colorless energy did 30 damage and prevented your opponent from playing any item cards during their next turn. Since capital EX Pokemon were basic, that meant that on your first turn going second, you could potentially item lock your opponent for the entire game if you had a way to keep your Toads alive long enough. Alright, this hand is gas. Turn 2 is going to be a massacre.
Are you ready? Yeah. God!
In the video games, Seismitoad is, well... But in the TCG, this Toad was a menace. Thanks to its item blocking as well as other annoying cards like Hypnotoxic Laser, Sudowoodo from Guardians Rising, which limits your opponent's bench space, and Faba to send your opponent's tool or special energy or stadium cards into the Lost Zone, all of these factors helped this ugly-ass Toad land 3 regional wins and 1 international championship, as well as a bunch of other top 8 finishes to boot. And all of these results allowed Seismitoad to gross a combined total of over $143,000 in the box office. Now that's a rich-ass frog. But how about we talk about a water type that's a little easier on the eyes now?
Wailord, the biggest Pokemon of all time. Oh. Sorry, I gotta take this. Hello? Uh-huh. Yeah? What do you mean? Okay, whatever. So, actually, it turns out that Eternatus is the biggest Pokemon of all time. I know, power creep's a bitch, huh? Oh, and my doctor just told me I have terminal cancer.
Now, in the games, I always knew that Wailord wasn't anything to write home about strength-wise, but it wasn't until I was doing research for this video that I realized just how truly awful it is. To get a good idea of the power level of Pokemon I featured in this video, I've been referencing the Smogon strategy decks, which is basically this encyclopedia of how Pokemon perform competitively in both singles and double battle formats over the years. Now, Smogon has their own tier system to rate a Pokemon's viability, with Ubers being like your insane OP legendary Pokemon, and going down from there with OU, which is overused, and then you got underused, rarely used, etc. And Wailord was rated in the ZU tier, which I didn't even know existed. ZU stands for Zero Use, and Wailord is featured among the likes of other Pokemon like Jinx, Girder, and Skunktank. So if Wailord is so ass in the games, then what made it such a force to be reckoned with in the TCG? Wailord's whole thing in the TCG for the longest time was having the most HP of any Pokemon. Now Wailord's first appearance in the TCG was in the EX Ruby and Sapphire expansion back in 2003 with an, at the time, whopping 120 HP on a single prize Pokemon. Fast forward a couple months to the next expansion, EX Sandstorm, and we get Wailord EX with a massive 200 HP, which set the record for the most HP of any Pokemon at the time. So yeah, you get the point. Wailord is a big guy. So what made this Wailord EX from Primal Clash so good?
Well, in order to do that, I'm going to need to give a quick refresher to all the non-sneaky normies on how you actually win a game of the TCG. In the Pokemon Trading Card game, there are 3 ways to win a battle.
First, you take all 6 of your prize cards. You get a prize anytime you knock out one of your opponent's Pokemon. Regular beta Pokemon are worth 1 prize, and Chat EX or V or GX or what have you are worth 2 or 3 prize cards, respectively. The second way to win is to just knock out all your opponent's Pokemon in play. If they don't have anything on your bench to bring up after their active Pokemon is knocked out, you win. The third and most unlikely way to win is by decking out your opponent. You have to draw a card at the start of your turn every single time, and if you begin your turn with no cards left to draw, you take the L.
And guess which strategy Wailord uses? Still thinking? It's okay, take your time. Yeah, I know, it is a little bit of a tough one, huh? I wonder. No, maybe I could just stop stalling and tell you.
So yeah, this deck's whole thing is to just leave Wailord in the active and just keep it alive for the entire game until your opponent runs out of cards. Sound boring? Well, it kinda is.
But, lucky for us, the guy I bought the deck from included this handy instructional video. Let's check it out and learn how to play Wailord EX.
In a world where his kind are hunted for sport.
Oh, who knew being a single mom would be so fulfilling? Ah! Mommy? No!
One Wailord has had enough.
That's it! I'm gonna kill that whaler!
He trained until he was too big to fail.
9,999! 1,000!
He assembled a team to take his revenge.
I'll help you discard an energy from your opponent's Pokemon.
Put one of your Pokemon into your hand to deny a knockout.
Each player draws or discards cards until they have 5 cards in their hands. Your opponent draws first.
With these supporters and this potion, I'll be unstoppable!
With his pieces in play, there was now only one thing left to do.
And then I'll use Burning Darkness for 180 damage. So I'm putting 180 damage on your Wailord. Now it's your turn.
I'm fucked. Coming this 2014 to 2015 standard format season.
Pass.
Revenge is a whale of a time.
Wait, please don't, please don't, I swear. I have a wife, I have a family, I have a mom.
Wailord EX, the movie.
I think I have more questions than answers now.